Hi guys! Last week I talked to you about what happens when authors respond badly to negative reviews. Coincidentally, at the same time that video went live, a lot of authors started talking about fans behaving badly on the flip side of that. And I think it's really important to continue this discussion because it's two sides of the same coin really, it's the same conversation. Abuse is happening on both sides and it isn't okay. We should be acknowledging it, talking about it and trying to stop it from happening. First of all, an interview went live with Maggie Stiefvater and Cassie Clare through MTV. Maggie talked about how a fan had worked out where she lived and then shown up on her doorstep a couple of weeks ago. Cassie talked about the sheer volume of online abuse she receives, everything from I hate the casting for the Shadowhunters TV series to I hate what you did with this character, why would you kill this person, but a lot more abusive and vitriolic. And even physical abuse, actually. She had at a book signing a fan come up to her with a book and slam it down on her hand because they didn't like that she'd killed their favourite character. Then John Green, who's hugely active on social media, particularly on Tumblr, was tagged in a post by two idiots on Tumblr who decided to accuse him of being a sexual abuser and a pervert, and then tag him in it so he couldn't help but see it. He responded incredibly eloquently about it, and then said that he would be taking a step back from social media, particularly from Tumblr, and not using it as much, not in the same way. He wouldn't be as interactive and available, because he couldn't open himself up to that level of abuse from people that frequently, which is completely understandable. So abuse is not okay in any way, shape or form, actually, and most people seem to realise this on a day-to-day basis. You wouldn't go up to your boss and start yelling at them because they didn't like the same books as you. You wouldn't break your grandmother's hand because she drank the last of the milk. Social situations where we're face-to-face, most people seem to realise that it's not okay to be that aggressive and abusive and bullying. However, as soon as you put a screen between you and the other person, some people see that as a shield. They see that it's blocking the person at the other end isn't real, they're not really there, they're not going to hurt by what you're saying to them, so they feel entitled. They don't feel that they're going to face any consequences for saying these things. So, rise of social media is a bit of a mixed blessing. On the one hand, you have unprecedented access to celebrities, authors, film stars, TV stars, people that you wouldn't normally come into contact with. Suddenly you can follow them, you can follow their lives, you can talk to them, they can interact with you. It's incredible. And authors are so giving and generous with their time. They make time for their fans, they make time to talk to them and have discussions, and it's incredible, it really is. But with that level of access, some people are feeling entitled, and they feel like they should be having more of a say. So they get angry when an author doesn't do what they want them to do with their characters, when the next book doesn't go the same way. And they stop seeing the author as a real live human being and start seeing them as this sort of, I don't know, idol pedestal person thing that isn't a real person and can't be hurt by horrible things being said to them. And I think it's incredibly brave that authors are starting to talk about it and acknowledge it and say, this is happening to us and it's not okay. And actually, they're only talking about some of the things that are happening. Imagine the sheer volume of stuff that they must be receiving on a day-to-day basis from people being abusive. If you got that on a day-to-day basis, would you want to have any sort of interaction with people? Probably not. So the very fact that these authors are still remaining online and trying to communicate with fans, even in a limited capacity to what they were before, is incredible. They are so resilient and brave for doing that. But it needs to stop, really, because if you continue to abuse someone, first of all, they'll retract and go into their shell and go, hey, look, I'm not going to communicate with you online. So you won't be able to talk to them and communicate in the same way. But if that continues to happen, why on earth would they bother to continue writing books? Why would they continue publishing if they're just going to get abuse from people for it? So I think we're hitting a tipping point. We need to really stop and think about what's happening, because I, for one, love these authors' books. I don't want to not have books from them just because some idiots decided to be awful to them. So take a step back and think. Think about what you're saying and what you're doing. I know this is only a handful of people that are doing this, and that most people possess a few more brain cells than that and don't go off on one authors. But if this goes for anyone, not just authors. If you're talking to someone online, take a step back for a minute. Would you say this to your mother? Would you say it to your best friend? Would you say it to the postman? If the answer to any of those is no, chances are good you probably shouldn't be saying this to an author, someone whose work you admire and love and has made a difference to you. So basically, I'm just asking people to think for a minute this week. Rule number 1, be a decent human being. Think about what you're saying before you start going off at authors online. Just because there is a computer screen between you doesn't mean that they aren't a real person and that they aren't hurt by what you're saying. And I want to open it up to you guys. As usual, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the subject? Have you had any abuse happen at you? I know that it happens to everybody. There is so much hate and horrible things happening online. And I want to hear from you guys. Because it needs to stop, really. Abuse of reviewers, abuse of authors, abuse of fans, abuse from fans. It all needs to stop.